Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving right into what is essentially a complete cinematic lecture presented by Dr. Kim on a topic that usually strikes fear into the hearts of chemistry students, the seemingly intimidating math behind acid-base reactions. But don't worry. In today's Explainer, we're going to break down weak acid strong base stoichiometry so clearly that you'll be able to navigate it like an absolute pro. Let's get into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. The mystery in the flask, mapping the titration curve. Phase 1, the starting line. Phase 2, the buffer zone. Phase 3, equivalence point. And finally, Phase 4, excess base.
Section 1. The mystery in the flask. Real-world chemistry.
So, before we even look at a single equation, let's talk about why we're actually doing this. We're going to physically track a single drop of strong base as it journeys through our chemical problem, because it's so easy to look at a whiteboard and forget that this math solves real physical problems. Imagine you're working in the dairy industry. You're standing in front of a massive vat, and you have to answer this exact question to verify the freshness of your stored milk. You can't just guess. You need hard, precise data. Here's the deal. Fresh milk, it has absolutely no lactic acid. But as bacteria naturally chow down on lactose, that's the milk sugar, they spit out lactic acid as a waste product. So the older the milk, the more lactic acid you're going to find. We can literally calculate the milk's exact age just by figuring out the concentration of this unknown acidic solute. And how do we solve that mystery? With a classic titration. We take a known, standardized solution, our titrin, hanging out up in that long glass tube called a burette, and we slowly drip it into our unknown analyte down in the flask below, right until the acid is entirely neutralized.
Moving on to Section 2, mapping the titration curve, the journey unfolds. Now, to actually pull off the precise mathematical calculations required for this, we need to know exactly where we are in the chemical process at any given moment. We need a map. This isn't just your average graph, it's our cinematic map for the entire process, a titration curve. It plots the pH changes on the vertical axis against the volume of base we're adding on the horizontal axis. See how it's totally non-linear? That unique shape divides our journey into 4 distinct mathematical phases, each demanding its own specific set of calculations.
To navigate this map without completely losing our minds, we have to follow the golden rule of weak acid stoichiometry, perfectly summarized by Dr. Kim right here. All problems of this type must be solved in 2 steps. A stoichiometric calculation, followed by an equilibrium calculation.
Think of it as a mandatory 2-step dance. Step 1, stoichiometry. Because we're using a strong base, that neutralization reaction goes 100% to completion. You have to calculate the new amounts of acid and conjugate base that are left over. Then, and only then, do you move to Step 2, equilibrium. After the dust settles from Step 1, you use equilibrium equations to find the resulting hydrogen ion concentration, and ultimately your new pH.
All right, Section 3, Phase 1, the starting line.
Let's wind the clock all the way back to 0, right before a single drop of strong base hits the flask. At this exact point, the volume of strong base is literally 0 milliliters. It isn't even a neutralization problem yet. It's just a weak acid sitting in water, naturally ionizing and reaching its own quiet equilibrium.
To find the pH at this starting point, you just tabulate your initial conditions using a classic IC table. Initial, change, equilibrium. You take those values, plug them right into your Ka equilibrium constant expression, and solve for X. That X is your hydrogen ion concentration. Take the negative log of that, and boom, you've got your initial, relatively low pH. Pretty straightforward, right?
Next up, Section 4, Phase 2, the buffer zone.
Okay, we finally open the burette valve. Drops of strong base start hitting the flask. Check out the boxed region on this curve. As that base, say sodium hydroxide, reacts with our weak acid, it produces water and a soluble salt, which is our conjugate base. Now, because we have significant amounts of both the weak acid and its conjugate base swimming around together in the flask, we've accidentally on purpose created a buffer system. That's exactly why you see this long, slow incline. The buffer is actively fighting off rapid pH changes.
Since both species of that conjugate pair are hanging out together, this entire buffer region gives us a massive mathematical shortcut, the legendary Henderson-Hasselbalch equation. The pH simply equals the pKa plus the log of the conjugate base concentration over the weak acid concentration. So, returning to our golden rule 2-step, here's how we conquer the buffer zone. Step 1. Stoichiometry.
Calculate the moles of strong base added, which wipes out an equal number of moles of your weak acid and generates that exact same number of moles of your new conjugate base. Step 2. Take those shiny new post-reaction mole values and just drop them straight into Henderson-Hasselbalch. That immediately spits out your gradually rising pH.
Which brings us to Section 5, Phase 3, Equivalence Point.
Keep adding base, keep swirling the flask, and eventually that buffer breaks. The pH absolutely skyrockets. We have hit the most critical and dramatic part of the curve, Phase 3. This vertical spike is the equivalence point. By definition, it's the exact moment where the moles of strong base titrant we've dropped in perfectly match the initial moles of weak acid analyte. Every single molecule of our original weak acid has been completely consumed.
But here is the massive twist of this whole masterclass. You'd logically think mixing equal amounts of acid and base would give you a perfectly neutral pH of 7, wouldn't you? Actually, scratch that. Unlike a strong acid, strong base titration, the pH at the equivalence point of a weak acid and a strong base is strictly greater than 7. It is undeniably basic.
So why the basic pH? Well, because we started with a weak acid. The neutralization converted it entirely into a salt, its conjugate base. And that conjugate base doesn't just sit there doing nothing, it actively reacts with the surrounding water to generate hydroxide ions. So for step 2 of our golden rule, Ka is completely out the window. You have to use the Kb expression to find your equilibrium constant, solve for your hydroxide concentration, calculate the pOH, and then subtract from 14 to finally reveal that basic pH.
Finally, Section 6, Phase 4, Excess base.
We keep that burette open, blasting past the equivalence point and leveling out into Phase 4, the flat top of our map. At this stage, the weak acid is ancient history. We're just dumping raw, excess strong base into the flask. Now we've got 2 bases in there, the weak conjugate base we made earlier and this newly added strong base. Here's the key takeaway. The strong base completely dominates. Mathematically speaking, the tiny bit of hydroxide produced by the weak conjugate base is totally negligible.
So the math here is honestly pretty relaxed. First, subtract the initial moles of acid from the total moles of base added to find your excess strong base. Next, and you can't forget this part, divide that excess hydroxide by the total combined volume of the solution. Remember, you've added a ton of liquid from the burette by now. Then take the negative log for the pOH, subtract from 14, and there is your final highly basic pH.
And just like that, we've successfully mapped all 4 phases. You've officially mastered Dr. Chem's cinematic lecture on weak acid stoichiometry. But before we wrap up this explainer, I've got a provocative puzzle for you. If titrating a weak acid with a strong base gives us an equivalence point greater than 7, how would all these rules, ice tables, and formulas completely flip if our analyte in the flask was a weak base and our titrant was a strong acid? Think about who dominates in that scenario. I'll leave you to ponder that completely reversed map. Thanks for joining me and keep questioning the chemistry around you.